The results of the National Senior Certificate examinations will be made public in the next few weeks. The waiting period and the subsequent release of the results usually cause anxiety for pupils. To help us better understand how pupils can better cope with the stress, we are joined via Zoom by psychologist Sikander Kalla. Thanks very much for joining us, and good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you as well, and good afternoon to the viewers, and a happy new year to all the viewers tuning in as well.
Same to you. Happy new year to you too. Let's talk about how pupils and as well as parents, how they can deal with this anxiety of waiting for these matric results.
Yeah, it's always quite a stressful time of the year, and I think the reason for that is there's the sense that everything that has happened over the past 12 years of education has come to this particular moment. So it feels like there's a lot riding on the moment, and it feels like it carries quite a heavy weight or gravitas to it. And I think that sense of pressure is where all the anxiety is rooted. It's rooted in the sense of, I've spent so much time in this secondary education system, and at this point, I'm now thinking, how does this impact my future? How does this impact the next couple of decades of my life? And I think that weighs quite heavy on individuals. It weighs heavy on the learner that's waiting their results, but it also weighs heavy on the support structures and the family around that individual. So I think there is a lot of heaviness there, but I also think from a coping perspective, we need to start thinking about how 12 years of education is more an average of how you functioned rather than representative of just one moment or one outcome. And I think that catastrophic thinking of this do or die mindset is what weighs so heavy on individuals. And I think it's important that we start normalizing and embracing that there are other sort of avenues to explore and to integrate, starting to think beyond just this one particular evaluative domain. And I think in a context such as South Africa, it's so pertinent, because I know we live in a context that has socioeconomic challenges that makes one think about knowledge acquisition and education as a means to an end, as a means to getting a job, as a means to employment. But I also think the issues that we face and grapple with in South Africa and on the African continent requires more critical thinking skills, requires innovative thinking, requires us to think outside of the box. And I think that is something that no one can take away from you. So regardless of the outcome that you face, with your matric results, I think it's always so important to say, this is where we're at now, where to from here? How can I tap into some of my resilience? How can I tap into innovative thinking? How can I tap into my support structures to be able to guide and assist me in moving beyond this difficult moment? And I think it's also important for parents and families to be able to normalize that and to integrate that sort of mindset into their children.
Yeah, and one doesn't want to be negative, obviously, when we are waiting for these matric results, but how do whether it is we're talking about the matriculants or the parents themselves, sort of prepare themselves for what could be disappointment, given the fact that there are expectations. It is the matriculants have expectations, the parents have expectations, the schools have expectations. I mean, how do we, in all of those expectations, still be able to prepare ourselves for what could be actually disappointment?
Yes, there's such a balancing act to that as well, because you want to be prepared and ready to deal with what may be a difficult outcome. But also at the same time, you don't want to panic and stress yourself out about something that might not be warranted for you to stress about. So I also think it's important that we are self-aware and we appraise how much of that internal distress is the monster in our head and how much of it is the monster in reality. And if it turns out that it is the monster in reality, and I think in this instance, we would be talking about maybe an unforeseen outcome or unpleasant outcome from a results perspective, I think that's where the sort of emotional containment kicks in. And I think you're asking the preemptive question as well of what do we do leading up to the results. I think the last update I got is the results would be announced by the Minister of Education, of Secondary Education, Basic Education on the 19th, and then distributed on the 20th by schools, or the 20th of January. And I think we still have some time to start building that sort of resilience, to start containing and reassuring one another that life will go on beyond this point, and we are here to help. We're here to find ways to assist. And talking about parents in particular, I think it's not only a moment where it's isolated to how do you engage with your child right now, but it's also how have you been engaging with your child over a long period of time? Have you created a place of comfort and acceptance, and a place where there's this sort of interpersonal comfort for your child to come to you and say, these are the things that I'm worried about, and for you to provide that parental wisdom and guidance and reassurance that we're here together and we'll figure this out together. And if one feels ill-equipped to do so, there are also a multitude of resources available. The South African Depression and Anxiety Group, SADAG, is also extremely useful in offering telephonic assistance to individuals that may be struggling from a mental health perspective following outcomes that they did not necessarily want or expect.
All right, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much for speaking to us then this afternoon. That is psychologist Sikander Kalla speaking to us, of course, on the back of what may be anxiety for some matriculants and parents as we await those matric results. We do understand that they will be out on the 19th of January.